Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to today's Global Read. And this is indeed a very special one, mainly because it was a number of years ago. I'm just going to ask Thomas, gosh, when was it? It was maybe as much as 8 years ago that we were in contact with one another. And got involved with the Parliament of World Religions and the work that Thomas was doing at the time. So we are so excited to have him here. And in chatting with him prior to our opening up the room here, I was congratulating him on the book. And of course, when I got the book, the very first thing I did was to look at what he wrote about the Charter for Compassion. And that was, a kind of a test. If it was wonderful, then we would certainly invite him with this incredible book, which is almost a tome unto its own. We asked today that we would have Politics of Being facilitated by someone who we in the Charter know really well, Gard Jameson, and maybe some of you who are listening to this know Gard as well. He is the founder of Compassionate Las Vegas. He sits on our board of trustees, and right now he's the treasurer of that group. He's also someone who takes care of one of our major committees as being part of the Charter family. So I'm going to turn this over to Gard. And then he will introduce Thomas, and they will get involved in a conversation. And we will invite everyone who's here to join in that conversation. So please put any questions or reflections that you might have in the chat box, and we'll make certain that that Thomas has some time to address those. Thank you. Gard?
Thank you, Marilyn. And Thomas, thank you so much for being with us today. We're just thrilled to have you here. One of the beauties of the Charter for Compassion is that, excuse me, my email is saying that this is not a safe connection. So now that I've made it safe, we live in an unsafe world, right, Thomas? And this is why we're doing what we're doing. But one of the beautiful things about the Charter for Compassion is you meet people and your family just grows. And so it was last May, I believe, that a group of us were at Plum Village in Bordeaux, France, which, boy, if that's not on your bucket list, you need to put it on your bucket list. And we enjoyed a week retreat. And I got to know Thomas and his family there in a wonderful way. And I had known about Thomas's work beforehand. In fact, I had read The Politics of Being beforehand. And I was just, when you got a good book that virtually every page is underlined, and my Politics of Being, virtually every page is underlined. And what struck me so profoundly, Thomas, when I read the book, and when I visited with you there in Plum Village, was a kind of visionary perspective that you bring. And I am a big fan of visionaries. There's, I believe, a Proverbs that says, without vision, the people perish. And what struck me was the way in which you've articulated in a variety of different categories or areas of concern, how we might do a better job. And so one of my quotes, I'll go back to my senior yearbook, Marilyn, where I quoted Robert F. Kennedy. And he said that some people look at things the way they are and say, why? And some people look at things the way they are and look at the possibilities of how it could change and say, why not? And Thomas, you are a why not person. And I want to sort of begin by having you sort of share with us the journey of how you created the Politics of Being and how you kind of assessed the primary areas of concern which you address in your beautiful book.
Thank you very much, Gard, Marilyn. Such a pleasure to join you today. Thanks for talking so beautifully about this book. I could almost call it a child, because as I was saying to Marilyn, it took me 10 years to develop that reflection. And it probably, I mean, it started, of course, from my own spiritual journey and realizing, you know, how more about our human potential. And then, you know, of course, wondering about what that means for social potential, right? And as I was doing some work, especially environmental work with UN agencies in particular, I've often felt like the general direction of our society or general development paradigm often runs against our efforts towards sustainability. So I kind of reached the conclusion that we really need a new development paradigm, a profound reorientation of our individual and collective lives. So 10 years ago, I embarked on this journey about, you know, how to better connect what could be a new development paradigm, but especially also how can spirituality in a relationship with science can tell us about a wiser direction for our societies. So I've searched for what could be a wisdom-based approach to development or spiritual approach. And I've researched what the science can tell us about it, but also what the wisdom traditions can tell us, and how when you know, coalition of you know, organizations like the Charter for Compassion, for example, when they come together to discuss our you know, our current challenges and what we can do about it, what is their perspective? And I found out in the Earth Charter this sentence, that the Earth Charter was published, and it's a very important document published in 2000 to give really a new vision for humanity as we step up in this new millennium. And it says, when basic needs have been met, human development is primarily about being more rather than having more. And by the way, we find also this sentence in the Rio +20 declaration of the interreligious movement. So I found out really that was kind of the cornerstone on which to build, you know, this a new vision for development. And I even argue that even to meet basic needs, we really need also to work on being more and transform our consciousness, right? So I've researched, took me 10 years, I said, to write this book, and I've researched where are the seeds of this new development paradigm that is somehow inspired by, you know, wisdom, spirituality. And I have, this is part of the book that is called Spiritual Values as the Foundations of the Politics of Being. So the first one, I call it understanding, is more like, let's say, cognitive, and to realize, you know, how we can think a world that is interconnected. So this is systemic, complex, integral thinking. The other one is life, and what, as in the regeneration movement, for example, that says we should harmonize ourselves with how nature works, and including how we societies is organized. So, and for all of these values, we can show clear connections with spiritual teachings. So, you know, nature contemplation has been really the source of all indigenous wisdoms, for example. So they have a lot to tell us. Also, the reconnection of our interconnectedness is also present in many traditions. So also happiness, which has been proposed, by the way, as a new development paradigm by the government of Bhutan. And there is a science. So for all of these fields, there is a science that have appeared, and there's these communities are developing social change initiatives, such as the Charter for Compassion, right, which is indeed another value I've put forward and dedicated chapter about love or compassion and empathy. Peace, culture of peace. There have been a lot of work at the UN on that, including resolutions. Mindfulness, so there's a lot of science now, and there's even this report, the UK Mindful Nation, which supported by a lot of members of parliament in the UK, that says, what's the potential of mindfulness in terms of public policies in health, education, business, and justice. And finally, in this last chapter on we could say mystery, right? And just that a more advanced civilization will look, including with science, into the mystery of our lives. So, and all of these values, we could say, now we have science that tell us, how to cultivate them at the individual and at the collective level. And all of these values are somehow new paradigms, and they can tell us, new ways of organizing societies, new systems in many sectors. So then, bringing them all together in the book, I show that there are indeed very concrete policy agendas based mainly on existing examples that can advance these politics of being. So it's really about bringing them together into a coherent and meaningful narrative for the development of our societies. So that's what I would say.
It's a beautiful summation. And I'm curious, how does Thomas Legrand integrate all of these incredible insights into his daily routine? Tell us about Thomas Legrand and your daily routine and how you cultivate a politic of being within yourself and within your family.
Sure, thank you, Gard. Well, I start my day, and it's not so long that I've studied long ago that I started including like more a kind of prayer, or just to develop the intention for the day. And I finally, there's so many different, I've learned from many different traditions which recommends different intention setting, etc. I finally land myself on I would say in Buddhism we call the 4 immeasurables, synthesizing a bit, bringing loving kindness and compassion together into love, peace, another one, or equanimity, let's say, and joy, which is very important for me at the moment. And the last one I bring in, because that's what to me enables most that, is mindfulness. So I try to, and this corresponds to the 4 chapters on my book I mentioned. So that's really my daily intention and practice. Then I think my path is really a path of service, and lately I've been trying to find more, to surrender more to the work that I'm doing, just be able to find joy and happiness in the very fact of being in service, and not being, putting a bit less emphasis about the results or outcomes that I need to achieve, because that puts more pressure. So I'm trying to learn from people like you, Gard, and who have, where I can see, we have reached that point of just be joyful, happy about being in service, and surrender to that, to that mission. So, and as I talk in the book, and as you may have seen being with us, so obviously I live next to a Plum Village, a mindfulness practice center. So I have a chance to go sometimes on a daily basis, just maybe to have do a walking meditation, or have a lunch in mindful eating in silence, just to be able to resource myself during the day. And then it's about, I would say, bringing this. I have 2 young daughters, as you know, and a wonderful wife who share with me that practice. So how do we bring that into? I talk a little bit in the book. How do we bring that also into the way we are raising our daughters, especially trying to be as much present as we can. The quality of attention and holding the space really for them. And and I have also for the last 2 years I've been working also with an initiative in the United Nations Development Program called the Conscious Food Systems Alliance, really working on the inner dimension of food systems transformation. So that feels very aligned, and so I'm very happy about that. And can just finalize to say, you know, already some years ago, I think when I came to live here 8 years ago, I with a vision of Thich Nhat Hanh that, you know, all of your daily life should be a practice, right? And so I've renamed my to-do list into working meditation list. So just to keep reminder myself, like all the work I'm doing during the day, you know, should be part of this practice.
That's beautiful. And again, I think you underscore the importance that we can't just talk about these matters. We actually have to engage in the practice. And I'm reminded of a friend of mine, Emma Sapala, who teaches the happiness class at Stanford. And she had a student who lived in a dorm where there was a goth lady. And the goth lady was all in black and just frowning and frowning and frowning, not any joy that anybody could see. And she was told, try this one simple practice of mindfulness, which is to smile at these people every day. And so this one student, she smiled at this goth lady, and she would get this kind of reaction from her, growl. And finally, after 2 weeks, the lady came up and said, I want to thank you for seeing me. And it feels like in our world today, so many of us are sort of hiding behind these masks of fear. And just on the other side, there's this amazing opportunity to experience what you're calling joy and peace, and the four immeasurables, right? And I ask myself, what is it that keeps us from taking that step? So could you talk about that a little bit? Why don't we just adopt a politic of being? Why don't we just engage each other with smiles and with matchless goodwill and unfailing forgiveness and abounding love? What is it about the human species that is so recalcitrant and so resistant to what is really good for us? Huh? It's a strange thing. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the root somehow of all our problems, right? And I would say to me it's a cultural program that I think, you know, many of us have felt, including as a children. Well, at least in my case in France, I remember, you know, just wondering, you know, why don't we talk more to each other, you know, in the bus or whatever, or where, you know, there's this natural need for connecting that somehow societies or cultures denies a little bit. In other cultures, it's also different. No? I'm thinking, for example, in Africa, where there is more space for this human connecting dimension. So I think it's a cultural program. Some call it a story of separation, where, you know, and a set of specific values, materialism, individualism, reductionism, anthropocentrism, etc., which, you know, set us apart from one another and from nature. And by doing so, I would say set us also apart from ourselves, because, you know, we are connected to all of that. We belong to all of that. And yeah, it's very unfortunate, because that's and we have taken, you know, a different route to what we call, you know, our vision of happiness, sometimes very materialistic, our vision of progress. And I think the good news that I try to emphasize in this book is that we could reconcile really individual flourishing with collective flourishing. And that is because of our spiritual nature, because the more we realize ourselves, the more we are connected with ourselves. Science tells us is a good path towards happiness. And the more, at the same time, and the more we connect with nature, the more we connect with one another and build relationship, is also a good path to happiness. So here we have a kind of theory of change where we could be indeed much better and the world would be also much better. And I think that we're just awakening to this possibility. And unfortunately, science is, showing more and more, emphasizing more and more this potential. So yeah, I hope we'll have, our culture is awakening and with a different vision about, about our identity, what we are, what is possible, and then that can lead to a new program, a new development agenda for our societies.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Thomas. And I read a line the other day. It said that materialism denies the reality of spirit. Secularism simply ignores it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very powerful line when I read it, because I do believe we live in a material secular society. But what I think is hopeful and what you point out in the book is that science, especially neuroscience, is pointing the way to, like Andrew Newberg at the University of Pennsylvania, that we have a God-sized brain. We have a brain that is actually accommodates the powerful experience of spirit if we would just consent to a process of transformation. So I'm curious from your vantage point, because you live in France, and when I had my children over there, I think I shared with you, I said, I'll give you $1 for every person you can get to smile. And they didn't get any money because nobody smiled at them. And I asked a friend of mine, George Dupont, I said, why is this? He said, God, you don't understand. In our culture, unless you are family, you are a stranger. And I thought how sad that is. But then I thought about the history, right? The cultural history and the intergenerational trauma that France, England, Germany, all these countries have experienced. And I sort of got it, right? But I'm curious, Dr. King says there's an arc in history. Is it your belief, are you a kind of Hegelian in terms of believing that ultimately spirit will succeed in this venture of the politics of being?
Yeah, I definitely trust that. And as I said, I think in the conclusion of the book, I think, this is meant to be, because basically the politics of being is about aligning our institutions with our true reason to be here on earth, which is being, which is becoming really fully ourselves and the best version of ourselves. So I think a more advanced civilization at some point will reach this conclusion, and will find it very obvious that we should organize society in a way that promotes our collective flourishing, or we could say even spiritual development, right? So I'm very confident. How long it will take, I can't tell yet, but at least, I think, as I show it in the book, is that at least we can see it. We have the science that tell us, why that makes sense, and we have all the practical example that can help make it happen. So at least it is, we could implement, if we all agree, we can make it happen tomorrow, right? And there's no doubt that I'm just focusing, on the policy agendas. I'm just focusing on what we can see of now, right? And there's no doubt that if we implement that, we will create a completely different, much more advanced civilization. And so, yeah, no, I'm optimistic, and I think, this is some people talks about how do you say, and what we're living now is an how do you say, sorry, an initiation, right, process. So basically, we are forced to evolve. It's an evolutive crisis, and in which, the worst and the best compete. So, we can lose hope and see only, all the difficulties that are happening in the world, but it's also these same difficulties that are forcing us really to evolve and to make this kind of big jump, which otherwise would probably not happen.
Beautiful. Beautiful. You know, there's a really smart guy by the name of Albert Einstein. Are you familiar with that name?
A little bit.
There are 3 principles that govern the entire universe. And I leaned in when I heard that and I said, what? I want to know what those 3 principles are. And he said, the first is unity, that we're all connected. Everything is connected to everything. And whether we acknowledge it or not, we are. And you spoke to that when you talked about culture of separation. And he said, out of that unity comes diversity, which is this amazing display of creativity and uniqueness that we find in nature and we find in the species, especially the human species. And the third principle, he said, is growth, that anything that's not growing is dying. And I've kind of elaborated something which is probably not right for a philosopher to do, but I've speculated that out of unity, there's a value associated called love. And out of diversity, which is the recognition of our differences, there's a value called compassion. And out of growth, there's a value called hope. And that compassion is the linchpin between love and hope. And so I'm wondering if you could speak for a few moments on your view of compassion, because I know you're right there in Compassionville, called Plum Village, which Thich Nhat Hanh wrote so much about compassion, and as the Dalai Lama and so many have done. But could you speak for a few moments about how compassion may be, if you will, that linchpin between love and hope, embedded in this politic of being that you're talking about?
Sure. Yeah, I think, as you said, now somehow from, you know, our feeling of connection or unity, right? We connect. We feel like the suffering of others is also our suffering, you know, because we are also these. There's no others, right? Everything is one. So and from there, really start the desire to alleviate that suffering. So to you know, build the hope of a better future, right? So definitely compassion, you know, as in Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching and some Buddhist traditions, has a huge role to play. And it's I think what's interesting is also so is a powerful engine, and you have also to manage it wisely somehow, because you can, you know, burn out and fall into compassion fatigue. So one has to also, you know, combine that, we say in Buddhism, with wisdom also, you know, how to best harness the power of compassion, right, to change the world. So if I was just in a call this afternoon with the organization of spiritual leader Amma, and she has been you know, she's really promoting compassion in action, and has millions of people, including me. And I'm very grateful for you know, the connection she helped me feel. And yeah, she has been named by the government of India chair of the C20, which is the civil society branch of the G20. And so, and she's talking about all these compassion-driven approaches. So definitely, I believe in you know, the vision of the Charter for Compassion, and how that can be a powerful force for transformation of the world.
It's beautiful. Yeah, we were in Barcelona at the Parliament of World Religions in 2004 with Amma, and my wife was a little down. And for those of you that don't know Amma, she's also called the Hugging Saint. And so we fortunately were able to get in this very long line, and my wife got a hug, and she experienced what you're talking about, that connection, that that quality of joy, and it immediately reversed what she was experiencing beforehand. And so it's very profound. And I think one of the things I appreciate about Thich Nhat Hanh and his teaching is the simplicity of it, and the recognition that mindfulness is as simple as a smile, it's as simple as a breath, it's as simple as a hug. And when we engage in those practices with everyone we meet, not just our family, but everyone we meet, we are changing the world in that process. So do you find in the culture of France, sometimes it's difficult to smile at everybody?
Yes, yeah. People think may find you weird if you kind of express too much, this will to connect, or so that can embarrass some people.
Yeah, there's a friend of mine, Jamil Zaki, has written a book called The War on Kindness. And he says that most people, the number of people in a very large survey, have 0 people that they trust. 0 people that they trust. I always ask my students, how many people do you think most people trust? And they all go, 5, 10, 2. I said, no, take it down. 0, which is that culture of separation that you're talking about. And so, for each of us as ambassadors of a different kind of culture, a politic of being, we have an opportunity. And so I'm curious, we're living in a very precarious time. There are nations who have nuclear weapons who we don't know from day to day whether or not they'll launch them. There are nations that are attacking other nations and using all kinds of excuses to do so, and creating qualities of violence, which, again, 2,500 years ago, right, the Buddha not only articulated that violence only leads to violence, but also the golden rule. And I'm curious, again, 2,500 years is a long time. When is the human race going to learn its lesson? Do you have any ideas on this?
Well, yeah, no, I think really the moment has come for a conscious evolution, right? I think there is a powerful movement that is maturing along these lines, because we have, there is no doubt we are on the edge of an anthropological, let's say, transformation. If you just look from very basically, we were coming from agriculture-based civilization. Now we have the industry, and we're moving very quickly into many other, different stage of civilization. So, and now we have science that, we understand much more where we are coming from, including as a species, and, all the story of the universe and nature and the evolution of life, etc. And at some point, I think we are about to realize that we can indeed, choose to the way we evolve much more consciously. And I show in the book, now science can tell us how to cultivate how these spiritual values at the individual and collective levels. So this means that, yeah, we should, instead of always reacting to the crises we create ourselves, we can just have a little bit more of more anticipation and vision, and try to consciously create the cultures that will help us, to go through safely the 21st century and what next to come for us.
Yeah, it just seems astounding to me how slow we are. Oftentimes in my class, I tell my students, I think I've shared this with you, this is really a game show. Door number 1 is fear, anxiety, and anger, and door number 2 is love, joy, and peace, the 4 immeasurables. And I say, now here's your first test in the class. Which door do you want? And by the way, if you want door number 1, don't raise your hand. Just see me after class. We need to talk. But it seems like, again, the planet has really opted for door number one for so long. And it's a culture of fear. And I'm encouraged because I see sprouts. I think you see them too, because you're living right next to Plum Village. I see sprouts of hope that are emerging everywhere. But talk to us, what makes you hopeful, Thomas, as you look across the face of the planet and even at your own culture there in France?
Sure, and at first now, and you said, why is that now? And I think you mentioned before intergenerational trauma. So I think there's a lot of healing work that needs to happen, because we have a lot of the things that have happened along history have not been really processed and has become, has a lot of influence about our way of functioning. So if we really need, if we want really a reset of our societies, we really need to work on this healing dimension. But what makes me hopeful, as I said now, is the fact that I've been able to write a book like that, which clearly shows that there's a strong rationale and there's very concrete pathways to go about it. So the very capacity just to be able to perceive it very clearly during that time is a source of hope for me. And I think it's just a lot of logical conclusions that at some point we should arrive to when facing these big difficulties. Unfortunately, and I did my PhD on forest conservation in Costa Rica, and I remember that the communities that were more environmental conscious, friendly, were the ones that have suffered the most in the past, especially of drought, etc. So unfortunately, we don't much anticipate, and often we have to really face the consequences of our actions before changing. So I think we are getting there. In the next decades, I really believe like we'll have some forms of collapse. We have entered already a very disruptive times. But I think, to me, the most important thing is not about whether what kind of collapse there will be, etc., but really seeing that as an opportunity to do this transformation, because otherwise, as I said, I don't think we will make such a big shift. We really need to be facing, and that's what happens also often at the individual level. People often wait for a burnout or a big disease, or to start working on themselves and start changing. So I think we are getting there, and there are some seeds. We are already cultivating the seeds of the future in many communities. Are many beautiful projects happening, such as the Charter for Compassion. And at the same time, I think we're just preparing that to become the new paradigm when the times are ready. So that's what makes me hopeful, and I know that it's a destiny of humanity. It's just spiritual nature. It's just how life works and evolution. So I know that we'll be getting there, and I hope to be of service of this vision.
And you are. And we have a lovely question from Joyce Morissette. She asks, are you a supporter of the IDGs, Inner Development Goals, to support the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals?
Indeed, I'm working very closely with the Inner Development Goals as they are a partner in our Conscious Food Systems Alliance, convened by UNDP, and I've contributed a little bit to their reflection. So, and they have, just to clarify that they have these 5 clusters: being, thinking, relating, collaborating, and acting. The way I call being probably encompass, all of these kind of dimensions. So emphasize being in contrast to having, and in contrast maybe a little bit to doing also, let's say. So probably what I call being is much broader than the category they have in the IDG. And funny enough, in our Conscious Food Systems Alliance, we use these which call transformative qualities and skills in the academic language, that are the IDGs. But we also emphasize connection to self, others, and nature, which is yeah, I think an important narrative also.
Beautiful. Joyce, thank you for the question. Good question.
And maybe I can suggest that I see a lot of these inner dimensions being more and more considered as a way to, for example, reach the Sustainable Development Goals, as the IDG says. Politics of being takes it one step further, because it's indeed redefining the goals. So it's not only these spiritual qualities, we could say, are not only a mean to reach an end, it's also they are the end themselves. The path is the end, right? Yeah. So that's vision of politics of being, which is, and I feel my objective was to, really deepen the case. If you're able to articulate a framing that deepens a vision, then you give also more space for all in between, the vision of the politics of being and where we are now. So I wanted to offer a deeper perspective, which can, broaden the whole field around spirituality, wisdom, and sustainability, let's say.
So another great question from Marge. We're about to celebrate the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago in August. I hope you and the family will come.
I will.
And we'll help you. But the question is, how do you see the role of organized religion in being part of that path forward to a more compassionate future?
Well, I see it crucial, really. Also being very pragmatic, is that the world is very religious, and it's getting even more religious at the time because of a growing population in more religious countries. So and religions really shape our worldview, our values, and even our actions at some point. So I think we will have to have religion have a huge role to play, and in many cases they need also to transform, to play that kind of evolutive role, and which means basically rediscovering the spiritual truth at the core of each tradition. And there I think inter-spirituality and even science, can help us just recognize that, they share at their roots, the same core values of, for example, compassion, right? So I think they can be instrumental to bring the discussion to, a more value-based discussions. I think Laudato Si, for example, from Pope Francis was a good example about how to bring this agenda around the environmental climate crisis, how to bring a more value-based approach. But yes, they will need to transform. And I think, yeah, the fact that we can now have this dialogue between religions and mystics from different traditions, recognize they share a common experience of unity, oneness, interbeing, and the fact that the science is also more and more validating that perspective on our human nature, I think is a good basis for that.
It's beautiful. I always love the story of Saint Francis of Assisi, who during the Crusades went to Palestine, and he crossed the enemy line, and the Sultan knew of Saint Francis, and they had the most wonderful meditation together. And there on one side were all the crusaders from Europe who were ready to take back the Palestinian lands for Christianity. And on the other side were all the Islamic warriors ready to take the land for Islam. And there were those two individuals. They were just joyful, almost gleeful in each other's presence. And there was a certain sadness when St. Francis left on the part of the Sultan. And I think, in relation to organized religion, it's the same kind of sadness. I think there are those within each tradition who see pluralism as the way forward. But there are also those, I teach world religion at the university, there are also those who are very exclusivistic. And until we change that perspective of separation and exclusivism to one of pluralism, and I love the image of Indra's net, of the connection, the affinity that we have for one another as human beings, not human doings or human havings, that we're just not going to get there. So a big opportunity, I agree with you, Thomas, is religion, but a big obstacle is also religion. And I think we just need to do, again, what Thich Nhat Hanh said, is smile more at each other, hug each other a little more, and be a little more compassionate as we walk down the path together. So thank you for that question. I want to ask the audience if there are any more questions for Thomas. We're at 9:47. And Thomas, I want to make sure that you've shared everything that you would like to share. Again, I encourage everybody who's not read the book, Politics of Being, to get a hold of it, and to pass it around. I think you will do what I did, which is underline, 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 and exclamation marks all over the place. It was interesting because God bless Marilyn Turkovich, because a lot of the initiatives that you speak about in your book, Marilyn had introduced us to, and we are so fortunate to have Marilyn and her wonderful staff. We put the website for your book there on the chat, and thank you, Lynn. And so Thomas,
it is my website. I don't think it is my website, but I've put the Politics of Being one, because I don't have one on Thomas Legrand.
And so thomaslegrand.com, is that your website?
No, it's not.
Oh, what is your website?
Politicsofbeing.com. I've put it on the.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that's the best place to find you. And again, I encourage any and all of you to put on your bucket list going to Plum Village. It is an extraordinary experience. I got a chance to engage in what are called the 5 mindfulness practices, and to sort of dedicate myself to those 5 mindfulness practices. And the one that really popped off for me, I don't know if you have a favorite, Thomas, share with me your favorite, but the one that was my favorite was deep listening and loving speech. You know, if we could just be better listeners and engage with the quality of goodwill in every word that we articulate and every thought that we think, I think we would be the pioneers of the future. But Thomas, do you have one of those mindfulness practices that is a favorite for you?
No, I was thinking about that training on deep listening and loving speech, but also I think, to me, how to cultivate the good seeds. That's the Buddha's teaching, and that is now confirmed by neuroscience, right? Whatever you practice grows. Whatever you water grows, right? And that's also the vision of the Politics of Being. All these spiritual values are all seeds now, and right now our institutions tends to water the seeds of greed, competition, selfishness, etc. So they grow it in individuals. But what if, instead of doing that, our institutions were designed to water the seeds of love, happiness, peace, understanding, etc. That would, that is the vision of the Politics of Being. So we can bring that at the collective level also.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah, I had a professor, undergraduate professor in sociology. He said, we have a tiger in our gas tank. Unfortunately, an ape is still driving the car. So in the name of evolution, we need to accelerate. And I also, at the beginning of every class, I have the students go have 3 minutes of mindful silence. And we do deep breathing, and we just engage in silence. And I tell them, better than Walgreens or CVS or any of the pharmacies of the world is what you have inside of your body. That there is serotonin and dopamine and DMT. And if you really want to high, if you really want to elevate, then try mindfulness, right? it works. Would you agree that it works, Thomas?
Of course.
And how are you experiencing joy in your life right now?
Well, trying to first with gratitude, also just every day, remind myself of all the good conditions that we have, right, and that we have more, as Nathan teach, right. We have already in the present moment more than enough to be happy. Also trying to appreciate the time I spend with my daughters, with my wife, and also reminding myself that this is impermanent, and we don't know for how long we are here, and just try to appreciate what is possible in the present moment.
Yeah, and you had a very famous mentor, a Buddhist teacher. Could you talk to us about that mentor of yours?
You mean Thich Nhat Hanh?
Well, Thich Nhat Hanh, but there was another one, a Frenchman. I'm forgetting his name, but Buddhist.
Is that Mathieu Ricard who wrote the foreword?
Very famous.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about Matthew and how he affected your worldview.
Yeah, well, Mathieu Ricard has an amazing journey. He did a PhD in biology, I think, before moving when he was young in France, and then he decided to become a Buddhist monk and went to the Himalayas to be trained as a Buddhist monk. At some point, he became the French interpret of the Dalai Lama, and then wrote a lot of books and was very, especially instrumental in fostering dialogue between contemplative traditions and science. So he has a book on altruism with all the science behind it, which has been very inspiring for me, and somehow, was a model for me in the kind of language I would be using, and the science, and how to bring science and wisdom together. So that's why I've asked him to write the foreword. And I didn't, by the way, I have not asked him. I just connected with him to share the book with him and let him read it. And then he offered me to write the foreword. So that was really beautiful. And that was also very helpful because the foreword is very elogious. It was also, I think, helpful for me to open doors. Now I have a French publisher, for example. So really good. So yeah, I think it has been really a role model, and it's interesting to see how in different generations. So he was himself inspired by another French person who went to the Himalaya to do some films, on documentaries, on teachers of India, etc. So every generation, has kind of its model that then can become model for others to come. So that's really nice also to see all the different connections.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And mentors are so important in our life. And you are a mentor to so many. And I know this program has been a blessing to so many. And my brother, Charlie Barker, says, and you spoke of altruism, Matthew wrote, that we have this altruistic urge. And I teach Chinese philosophy, and there's a wonderful philosopher named Mengzi who says, if you saw a child crawling toward a hole and you knew that hole was deep and it would die if it fell in, what would be your impulse? And I know for all of us on the screen and all of us listening in, our impulse would be to save that child. But Charlie's pointing out that if we think twice or three times or four times about it, some of us might hold back. So what is it that holds us back from saving that child, or from saving this planet, or from engaging in the deeper kind of mindfulness practices that are so necessary to a bright future?
Maybe the staying in the comfort of what we know, or kind of routine and habits, right?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful answer. Because there's, as you say, there's impermanence, and there's a quality of surrender to the unknown that makes us fearful, that causes us to think we're not in control. And by the way, we're not in control. Once you get that, the happier you'll be. But yeah, it's something which, again, if we think, the first thought is certainly we're going to go save that baby, but too many of us second guess or really mess it up, if you will, by overthinking how we should respond. And again, I think your teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, in so many ways really clarified the path, as the Buddha has, as so many have, that it's not that complicated. It's not that difficult. So I want to thank you very much, Thomas. And any concluding thoughts that you wish to share?
No, maybe just thank you. Just always a pleasure to connect with you, Gard. I'm very grateful about our relationship and the way we met. I think you were, these things always happen the same way. I think you were probably the first people I talked to during that retreat, and it's always the good one, right? So I'm very grateful for our connection and look forward to be more work together. And thanks for inviting me in, and thanks for all the work you're doing.
Well, thank you, Thomas. And again, I would, Gard is a French name, and if we had not been Protestants, I'd probably still be in France, and probably right there at Plum Village next to you. But I am so glad to call you brother, and Mikasa Sukasa.
Likewise, we can remember that. And by the way, I will have soon a new one. We are finishing the renovation. So even better for you to come.
Fantastic. And our mutual friend, Marilyn Pato Bantan, will be hosted by Thomas and his beautiful family shortly after a trip to Africa. So Marilyn, you get the last word here.
I do, and thank you so much, Thomas and Gard. And I'm excited that you're coming to the Parliament of World Religions, and we'll have that reunion. It'll be our third Parliament, and so I'm very excited about that. It's interesting because some of the things that you've talked about today, I just want to quickly remind people that we have an introduction to compassionate listening that is going to start March 13th, so that if you're interested in looking at that as a deeper skill that you can incorporate in your life skills, please consider joining us for that. And then our EdNet Forum, every month, the third Thursday of the month, we look at what's happening around the world, good in education, that we get an observation, an opportunity to really engage with someone or an organization. This time it's Lucy Bailey and supporting young people to lead mentally healthy lives. She's part of Bounce Forward. So we are thrilled to have her for that presentation next Thursday. And just in honor of Plum Village, one of the things that we have been doing since October, I believe, is that the last Saturday of every month, and the time here is Pacific time, but it's towards the end of the day in Europe. It's a wonderful gathering. It's led by Orla O'Sullivan, who's the education coordinator at Plum Village. It's our opportunity to come together in a circle. And we have right now a really wonderful group of people. Everyone here is really welcome to join us for these monthly gatherings. And just so that you might save the date, April 5th is Golden Rule Day, and we're going to have an opportunity to look at a new approach to Golden Ruleism, or Golden Rule. It's called Golden Ruleism, and we have books available for people. So for a small mailing donation, we'll be able to send those out. And it's going to be led by Felipe Zurita, who is our social media person, and also Shane O'Connor, who will co-facilitate that event. And we're really hoping that all of you would consider joining us for that. Thank you again, both of you. This has been really wonderful. And we will be getting out the recording of this, and it will also go up on the Sign Network so that many, many more people will have an opportunity to listen to you. Thank you again. Goodbye, everyone.